Our girl is destitute.
What conspiracy theory do you have?
You're the Feyre.
I'm the Feyre. He hates Tamlin. He's also a bit of a petty bitch.
And yet, she decides, let me just shoot my shot and see it. I'm like, girl. Hi, everyone.
Oh, hi, everybody.
We're just laughing because this is going to be a very interesting episode.
This is going to be a very, very interesting episode. A lot of exciting things to discuss.
A lot of exciting things.
A lot of sticky situation things to discuss.
A lot of just stuff going on right now in the world. That's
yeah, that is just hard.
crazy.
It's like the only word you can use, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we can, jump right into what is basically our joint Cauldron Save Me for the week.
Yeah. So for the record, today is June 13th, Friday the 13th. Haha. Our Cauldron Save Us joint one is more of an update on the situation going on in Los Angeles and really the country. As we mentioned last week, the ice raids are getting really, really bad. They are only getting worse. But I am so proud of Los Angeles, the people of Los Angeles, who are just really fighting for everyone's rights, whether you are an immigrant or not. I know the media is currently spinning it a different way. They're being very peaceful. I have only seen by far peaceful protesters. The violence is coming from ICE agents and police and other armed forces. People are dancing in the streets. They're bringing their children to these protests. They are super, super, super peaceful from the protesters' side. Not just peaceful, but extraordinary examples of community coming together and supporting one another. Seeing so much beauty in all the people who are fighting, which I think is really, that's a huge theme of all of Sarah J. Maas's work. So I've been really fortunate to have ACOTAR to look to in this time. But what's not peaceful is when ICE and LAPD shoots non-lethals, quote unquote, into the crowds, hitting journalists in the face. That's the real horror that's going on. But I am very proud of the people who are speaking out. If you speak out, be careful how you do it. Speak out for sure, but just be smart. Look to the leaders and people who have done this before and follow their example, especially at protests. And yeah, support our First Amendment, support our neighbors and humans who live here regardless of documentation status. Fun fact, being undocumented, and actually, yeah, we should be really using that term, undocumented, not illegal. Being undocumented is a civil crime. Other civil crimes include jaywalking and getting a parking ticket. So,
Perspective.
Yep.
I think that was all really beautifully said. I think this is all wildly important. I'm sure we'll have a few listeners being a little confused as to why this little ACOTAR podcast is, talking about politics and stuff, because a lot of us use these books to escape. But I think what Ariel and I have discussed many times is it is impossible to read these books and not clock social commentary, not clock just what a lot of these writers are kind of trying to say about the world, about humans, about their rights. And so for Ariel and I, it feels very difficult for us to completely separate the two.
Yeah. Politics, a lot of people say, I'm not political, or whatever. And it's like, politics are morals. They are, right? You can say you voted for so-and-so because, they're going to give you a better tax break or whatever. But what you're basically saying is you care more about your money than people's human rights.
Right.
And that is morality. So yeah, like Corinne said, it's very important to us. I think the romantasy genre, fantasy in particular, but romantasy as obviously as a subgenre, um, it is political.
Yeah.
All of Sarah J. Maas's books. I would say Akatar is kind of the least funny enough.
Yeah.
The Throne of Glass girlies and the Crescent City girlies, they know, like
Yeah.
how political it gets. But
Yeah.
if you've read any of those books, if you've read Fourth Wing, if you've read The Crowns of Nyaxia, like all of them, they talk about politics and tyranny and authoritarianism in some way.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it wouldn't make sense for us to not talk about it. The last thing I wanted to say is I want to highlight a few organizations that are doing some really amazing work on the ground, helping with all these ice raids and protests. So, of course, the ACLU is always an incredible organization to support. You can support any of the ACLU locations, but if you really want to support LA, the ACLU of Southern California is the one you're going to want to support. I believe the way you say it is Weingart YMCA. They're helping people as well. And then finally, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, or CHIRLA, I think is how you say it. They're also doing some really amazing work to help specifically immigrants and making sure they have the right to due process, because everyone who is on American soil, regardless of, quote unquote, legal status, has the right to due process. That's how we figure out, you know, if that's how people get legal status here, is due process. So, but yeah, so that's the Cauldron Save Me for
Mhm.
this week. I think, kind of on a similar topic of politics, we do want to, up front, before we get into this week's chapters, we want to give a bit of a trigger warning.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking in these chapters about consent. Shall we get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it. So, yeah, so this week, right, friendly reminder, we did chapters 21 and 22. And yeah, chapter 21, the this whole like beginning portion. So we're still with this like dark stranger,
Hmm.
right? In this whole beginning, and like it's really interesting because this we get such a description of this character, and he sounds really fucking hot,
Real hot.
honestly. And like this whole portion, I literally have so many notes that are written down that are like, okay, like who is this guy, and like what about Tamlin? Like
Yeah.
what are we doing? We're introducing this like kind of other character, and kind of as we like keep going through this whole conversation, I had this one moment where I was like, "Oh, okay, I got it. He's the bad boy character. Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool." We always have to have one in these
Yeah.
books, right? That like the dark bad boy where you like aren't really sure if he's a good guy or a bad guy, cuz even when like he leaves, you're still really unsure of how we're supposed to feel about this guy. But I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay, got it. He's the bad boy character." I also feel like this moment with him and this character, for me, it's this reminder of like how pretty the Fae are, how tricky they can be, how you can get sucked in by their looks or by like some of these things. Like for me, he almost feels like this like weird, like kind of how you get it in like vampire stories sometimes too, where you
Yeah.
get these characters that are like very morally gray, and you're sort of like, oh, this is the friendly reminder of that these beings can be very dangerous with a pretty face.
Yeah.
And this kind of like this whole chat too, just it feels dangerously sexy.
That's the perfect description, dangerously
Yeah.
sexy. Well, and, like, speaking of morally gray, like, the morally gray man is an entire trope within
Oh yeah. Oh
romantasy.
yeah.
If you're new to romantasy, listeners, like, that is a very, common trope in romantasy books.
Yep.
And yeah, it's so funny because, like, rereading this is, again, my first time rereading this.
Mhm.
I was thinking back to the first time I read this chapter,
Mhm.
and I was like, "How did I feel?" And I remember this feeling of, like, almost like having being in a car and the brakes are slammed, right? Of like,
Right.
what?
Yeah.
Like you said, what about Tamlin, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like Feyre is like flocking to this guy, right? Like
No.
she feels somewhat scared of him, like
Yeah.
especially because of the fact that on page 191, she says he'd been able to scare off those fairies without lifting a finger. So there's something dangerous about this guy,
Yes.
right? We also know
Yes.
he's not part of the Spring Court. He says
Yep.
that outright. And then when she asks him, why are you here then at a Spring Court festival?
Right.
He says, because all the monsters have been let out of their cages tonight, no matter what court they belong to. So I may roam wherever I wish until the dawn. So he is aligning himself with the monsters,
Yes.
right? Which is fascinating.
Yep.
I think it brings up this discussion of like, would a monster tell you they're a monster?
Right.
And the thing is, like, we really don't know. Like, I think, especially in romantasy, like sometimes sometimes it's that thing of like believe people when they tell you who they are at first.
Right.
It
Right.
could very well be one of those scenarios. It may not
Yeah.
be. We
Yeah.
truly do not know. I
No.
think the fact that we don't get a name leaves us dangling a bit on a cliff.
Yep.
So he's gonna come back. We will find that name out at some point. But we know that, and we know that despite the fact that he feels dangerous, Feyre is drawn to him in some way. She calls him the most beautiful man she's ever seen, which is
Yeah.
like that's an intense statement to say.
Yes. And just like there's so much language used here that really I feel like shows the push and pull like of her feelings, because it's
Yeah.
like the chapter even begins with her just being like, like everything about the stranger radiated sensual ease and grace, like, and like his eyes, they twinkled with amusement and all this stuff. But then that paragraph ends with her saying like, but something about the way he stood with absolute stillness, the night seeming to press in closer around him, made me hesitate to speak, made me want to run in the other direction.
Yeah.
And she even has this other moment later where she's like, had I just traded 3 monsters for something worse? And
Yeah.
then immediately is like, but I've never seen anyone so handsome, but I have so many warning bells going off. Like there's this really interesting push and pull, like I think the whole time. And so I think that's why it's like, I know when I first read this, I was like, I really hope we meet this character again, because we're building up to something.
Yeah.
Like it would be bizarre if she built up this much of like a meeting and then we never see him again. So it's just
Right.
like, really hope we meet him again and we figure out who the fuck this guy is. The other thing that I think is like really important to bring up is that while there is this predatory prey, she uses some of that language too during this whole moment.
Mhm.
He's like circling her, which is very predatorial, and at a certain
Yeah.
point he actually like blocks her like exit,
Yeah.
because he's like trying to get kind of all these answers out of her, right? But I think what's really important to bring up is that when he offers to be her kind of escort, right? Because he pretty quickly finds out like, you're lying, you're not here with friends. When she talks about like, oh, they went to go get me drinks, and he's like, yeah, no, because that's not the order of Calanmai, so you don't know what's going on. He offers to escort her by simply offering a hand. He doesn't touch her, besides
Nope.
when he picks her up. He offers a hand, and when she rejects him once,
Mhm.
and he accepts the rejection. So
Yes.
that immediately, I think it's a really important thing to bring up of like, okay, so we just came out of the situation with these 3 dudes and it was very scary.
He
Like,
saved her.
and he saved her, but it's like it's the comparison, right? Of like
Yes.
these powerful beings, 3 of them,
Yeah.
cornered her and were not going to give a fuck about what she said no or whatever. And this guy doesn't touch her and is like, and she says no, and he's like, okay. So again, push and pull. You're like, okay, he was kind of scary, but he was actually quite respectful of her and just like dipped when she said no. So
Yes. That is extraordinarily important
yeah,
to the conversation around this character. Not just in this scene, but we will see in future scenes. And just consent. I mean, I think consent is the theme of these 2 chapters,
yeah,
honestly. Because it plays a lot in both chapters. Sarah J. Maas is playing with the perception of fairy tales and like who who's good, who's bad, who's in the middle, right?
Mhm.
And like that's a big circle this, remember it kind of concept for this character is remembering that at least in this scene he respects Feyre's boundaries.
Yeah, and he respects her while clearly being an extremely powerful being, because there's
Mhm.
so much language in this beginning that is her just like she can literally feel his power like oozing off of him kind of
Yeah.
vibe. And that's especially since she's been around Tamlin for like a good chunk of time by this point.
Yeah.
And while I think she's gotten used to the power of Tamlin, there's just something different with this guy. Like the
Yeah.
power that she's reading and simply him just walking around. He's not like turning into a beast like we've seen
No.
with Tamlin. Like he's literally not really doing any action, honestly. He's just walking. And
Yeah.
it's just there's this like vibe, which is really hard for me because that just sounds really fucking hot. Like I fucking love these characters when they're just like wildly powerful, but they don't really have to show it. You just like feel it and you're like, oh, it's fucking sexy. Yeah. So like I remember the first time reading this just being very torn of like, wait. I'm now getting like really into this dude. But I've actually only been with him for like 3 pages.
Yeah.
What is happening here? But also just like his vibe, he just kind of feels like such a cocky asshole that I remember the first time being like, okay, is this also just again kind of what I said before, like a reminder of like he's just another cocky, pretty Fae. Like we
Yep.
just got this, but he's just a different type of powerful. And I mean, also we got to remember the power of it's going to sound really stupid, but the power of seeing someone's entire face. She's been surrounded by
Yeah.
these people who have masks on. And she even kind of says, like, you know, I don't know, like it had been so long since I'd seen a bare face that looked even vaguely human. There's also this weird thing of like being able to see the entirety of that person. Like we all kind of remember that, like with COVID, like once
Yeah.
masks came off, I met a lot of people during COVID where I only knew them with masks on. And you take a mask off
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, there's your whole face. Oh,
Yeah.
hello. Hi. I feel like I'm meeting a new person, So
Right.
I think like that's also like an interesting reminder of like, is she so taken by his beauty purely just because like she's seeing his entire face and like
Yeah.
also, like a really well tailored suit can really do a lot for a man.
I
So, and he's in
mean,
all black and you're just like, ugh, hello.
the whole vibe thing reminded me of I've heard this from a few interviews from people. Might be a weird comparison, especially if you know who this character is, but I think it kind of works. So people who personally knew Marilyn Monroe would talk about,
Mm,
when she wasn't out in public or just like kind of like not trying to bring attention to herself, even if she was in public, she held herself in a different way than when she was Marilyn Monroe,
yeah.
right? Like there's this one story, I forgot who it was, but it was like a good friend of hers talking about they went out in Manhattan one day. Like Marilyn was not at all in any disguise. Like she was dressed like she normally dresses, but the way she carried herself was not in like the typical star Marilyn Monroe way. So they're walking down like I think it was like Fifth Avenue, somewhere like really densely populated in New York, and no one recognized her. And Marilyn turns to her friend and says, "Watch this." And suddenly she just like adjusts her posture a little bit, and suddenly she's Marilyn Monroe.
Mm,
And immediately people recognize her and are like, "Oh my God, it's Marilyn Monroe." That kind of reminds me of this character of like just the way he carries himself. Like like you said, he doesn't, it's not like he's transforming like Tamlin does or like using any magical power
no,
at all. It's
no.
all about how he carries himself,
Yeah.
right? And that's what shows the power
The
in him.
power.
So,
Yeah. Which is actually
yeah,
kind of like, I feel like the more we talk about this, the more it like kind of this character is actually like pretty scary actually if you like really because the fact that there's that much
Power in one person.
coming out of this character, you're just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, this feels. I love that she decides to stay
Yeah.
it at the
Yeah.
right after all of this. Like, I feel
Just
like my
wild.
ass would just be like, okay, peace out.
Deuces.
I'm gonna go back because literally me being out here within, I mean, what? It's been like 20 minutes and she's
At
already
most.
like been attacked, had to be saved by this like dark, sexy stranger. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we've already proven you should really not be out here at
Yeah.
all anymore. But sweet baby girl, she's gonna go out and explore. And you know, they talk about how like she kind of has to like brush that like off. Like, she's still like pretty freaked out, and so you know, you could be that she's sort of in the zone of still kind of like figuring out what she's gonna do. And also for me, I feel like that's another marker of like, baby girl, get back to the house. Like, we are surrounded by just so many unknowns here. I think we've proven you
Yeah.
don't have like the power to
Yeah.
really be here right now. And and then
But
Lucien just
yeah, I was gonna say she doesn't stay long because
no.
then, I feel like the official DD of of the gang,
Yeah.
Lucien, comes in and is like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" I mean, he literally calls her an idiot. Like, throws her over his fucking shoulder like a potato sack, hauls her back to Tamlin's estate, and is like, "You're a fucking idiot. Like, why would you be here?" And she has to tell him, like, "Buddy, like, no one fucking told me what Calamai really is,
No one
right?"
has given me like any information, like,
No.
except like she's just supposed to blindly
Yeah.
trust like Lucien and Tamlin being like, yeah, no, you should just stay here. Which,
Which
like,
why would she
well,
just blindly trust
okay.
that?
You know, gavel, devil's advocate.
Here we
Like,
go.
I feel like, yes, I would say by this point, I do feel like Tamlin and Lucien have kind of shown that they do have like her best interests from their
Yes.
standpoint of how to deal with that. But like,
Right.
her best interests at heart, like they do want to keep her safe. I mean, I guess like to a degree, like we've seen them save her from like certain instances. I mean, Lucien, you know, he was a little slow on the whole Naga thing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like, so a little bit of devil's advocate of like, okay, like, it do feel like you could have trusted them. But I genuinely feel if someone had like this explanation that Lucien ends up giving about what the Great Rite is, if
Yep.
someone had just said that,
She would have stayed the fuck
she
away.
wouldn't have wanted to go.
No.
Like,
No.
because especially
Like,
with how her like feelings are developing for Tamlin,
yeah.
like she doesn't want to see that.
Yes, I agree. I think she does know they have her best interest at heart. But to me, it feels a little bit to devil's advocate, your devil's advocate.
I raise you.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like, we gotta remember she's a 19-year-old, right? She's a
Yeah.
bit precocious.
Truth.
I think it's like that thing of like,
Mm.
it reminds me of like when parents, like your parents, of course, for the most part, have your best interest at heart, right? Like any good parent is gonna protect their child. But sometimes, it's that thing of like when parents like have to lie to you, whether it's like a literal lie or lie by omission sort of thing. It's like, okay, fine, but you're also not giving your kid, who is an adult at this point, a choice, right? Like you're not letting them make decisions for themselves. And that's kind of where I feel Tamlin and Lucien fall into right now of like, just give her information so she can make her own choices in life. Like she's an adult woman.
Yes. No, totally. And what's really funny, honestly, is the fact that I did that devil's advocate, because what the fuck kid was I? Right?
Oh, I know.
You know.
I know.
So like
Yeah.
I was the one where like, you know, if my mom was like, don't walk on that side of the street, I would have run in the middle of traffic to go on that side of the street. Like I was that kid, hardcore. So like it is pretty funny that I did that devil's advocate, because like I completely understand why Feyre was like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna go.
Well,
like I can handle my shit, you know?
what they were probably thinking is if we tell Feyre, she's gonna go,
Yeah.
right? Like, because she's gonna want to get chosen by Tamlin, right? Which
Mm.
brings us to what Calanmai is.
Yeah.
First off, Calanmai is basically this, it's for the harvest, right? It's for
Mm-hmm.
the crops. And it's so that they grow every year. It's a ritual we do every year. On page 193, Lucien finally explains to her the way Calanmai works. So he says, "We do this by conducting the Great Rite. Each of the 7 High Lords of Prythian performs this every year, since their magic comes from the earth and returns it to it at the end. It's a give and take. Tonight, Tam will allow great and terrible magic to enter his body. The magic will seize control of his mind, his body, his soul, and turn him into the hunter. It will find him with his sole purpose, to find the maiden. From their coupling, magic will be released and spread to the earth, where it will regenerate life for the year to come. Tonight, Tam won't be the fairy you know. He won't even know his name. The magic will consume everything in him but that one basic command, the need." And then Feyre asks, "Who is the maiden?" And Lucien says, "No one knows until it's time. After Tam hunts down the white stag and kills it for the sacrificial offering, he'll make his way to that sacred cave where he'll find the path lined with fairy females waiting to be chosen as his mate for tonight. Yes, all those fairy females around you were females for Tamlin to pick. It's an honor to be chosen, but it's his instinct that selects her." So, it's basically a fairy orgy, is what it is.
Yeah.
If you're reading this for the first time, listeners, we encourage you to come back after you've read the whole series to last week's spoiler section, because we had a very interesting conversation about the nuances of the orgy.
Nuances of an orgy.
And it is an orgy because he later goes on to talk about, like, even though the main Calamai, the Great Rite, is technically between Tamlin and whoever he selects as the maiden, other Fae are encouraged to join in once he's chosen the maiden, because all of their magic, which is sex, helps with the harvest.
Yes,
right?
it helps give magic to the land. So it's like, once how I kind of feel, or like what I feel like the order of ceremonies is, like, once the maiden is chosen, I feel like then after that it's kind of like, all right, all y'all others get in there, like choose a buddy and help give, spread your seed
For the seeds. I remember the first time reading this, even we talked about this in last week's spoiler section, even before we got the full explanation of what Calanmai was. I've done some research on, like, pagan cultures and, like, kind of witchcraft stuff, and when Tamlin was explaining in the last chapters in his very coded way what it was, I'm like, oh, this is about to be an orgy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially knowing it's called Fire Night, all that. Like, yep, this is gonna involve some sex magic.
Yeah. I mean, I think Sarah J. Maas does a good job of sort of kind of throwing in these little phrases that sort of like show her kind of like instinctual jealousy. She's in this like very uncomfortable space, like her stomach hurts, like she's jealous, but she's like confused by her jealousy, and she's just like, oh god. But I think we're still a little bit like, okay, but like, you guys don't want Feyre there because it is going to turn into a sexy time orgy. And like, I do think that because she gets this flashback of those 3 guys attacking her, and she kind of understands now why they were so excited about her being there, and she's like, ugh, like really uncomfortable by that. But we're still a little bit of like, okay, like, is there more to Feyre not being there? And then this whole moment of like, well, if you were there, he would have smelled you and claimed you, and it wouldn't have been Tamlin who brought you into that cave, and I don't think you would have liked it. Tonight is not for lovemaking.
This is where consent comes in.
This is when we start getting into the consent conversation. This is when we start getting into like the stickiness of a lot of this stuff, because, bear with me, what's really weird is, back to Corryn and Ariel's favorite thing, 2 truths, right? Is like, on one end, it's like weirdly assuring that if she had been there and he would have smelled her, he would have wanted her. So there's like this weird kind of like validating moment of like, oh, so like, I mean, this is kind of one of our first like official, like, Tamlin wants you. Like,
it's the weirdest validation.
It's the weirdest validation, but it is this like, she has felt vibes, obviously, like, we've had the garden scene by this point of him kissing her hands, and like, there's clearly been stuff. But this is the first like verbal, yes, he wants you and you will distract from the right.
Yeah.
And so there's this weird validating of feelings here.
Well, it also brings up real quick, and I don't think this ever gets answered in any of the books. Would the right have worked if he'd had sex with Feyre? Because, like,
Yeah, like will it work if it's with a human?
right.
Right.
Because there is this part of me, I do think that both Tamlin and Lucien are looking out for Feyre in the sense of like Lucien said, that would not have been Tamlin, right?
Mm.
It would not have been lovemaking. It would have been rough,
Yeah.
basically. This is a ritual. And I think they are looking after her and her well-being in that sense. But you also have to question, like, are they, he is the High Lord of the Spring Court. He has a job. Lucien is his emissary. He has a job. Are they also thinking about it from the standpoint of, like, we don't know if the right would work if a human partook, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
You know?
I hadn't thought about that at all. And and
Yeah.
I don't fault them for thinking that way either,
No.
right? Cuz
No.
it's like this is clearly this is tradition, right? This really doesn't have anything to do with romance, with feelings, with this is purely what they need to do to like for their court, for the earth. Like this is just it's a transaction,
Yeah.
really. And so, yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. Like, it could partially be that, like, yeah, we know if you're out there, Tamlin's going to want you and the right isn't going to work if he has sex with you. I think also, too, I think Lucien's kind of saying this in a way right now of, like, I know you guys want to bone. And this is not the first way you guys should bone at all. This is not the way it should be. Because the fact that he even says lovemaking, like, there's a kind, like, that word choice is, I think some people think that he's kind of like teasing her, but I think it's him kind of being like, that's how we want your guys' first time to be. We want some special love making for you two, and this is not the way.
Well, because regardless, let's say somehow Tamlin was able to overcome this magic, right? Like in terms of the feralness, it sounds like he becomes, and actually we know because we see it in the next chapter.
Yeah.
Regardless if he does love her and it was love making, at the end of the day, he is still using the maiden.
Yeah, exactly. It's purely a transaction. It's purely we have to do this. Because I think even the idea of the fact that we're really supposed to believe that this magic is like completely taking him over. It is entirely like I feel like I almost view it as like everyone gets turned to their, especially the High Lord, gets turned into like the most basic feral animal survival instinct, which is to eat and
fuck,
right? To procreate. When that's like, we're really supposed to believe that's where his like headspace is. Like that is not the way for him and Feyre to it's just not. And also, this is so, I mean, Tamlin even said it. This is so very fairy. And it's just safer for it just to be just fairies. Like, because also like Lucien throwing her over his shoulder and racing back to the house is also a reminder like of how powerful and strong these creatures are. So it's like, what could be considered like rough, fun sex, but still rough sex for them?
Could be really dangerous.
Not gonna be. I mean, let's throw it back to Twilight days, you guys, of just like the well, I mean, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
That was a big reason why Edward doesn't really want to have sex with Bella, because he's like afraid he's gonna hurt her. And many of us, when they finally had sex and he like tore the bed, we were like, fuck yeah, but like Edward hates that, right? So it's kind of this same idea of just it is actually not safe for her. And not just from a consent standpoint, from like a physical body, like this, we don't know where this is going to go. Yeah. But again, it's so hard too, because she has this quote where she's like, that some feral part of him wanted me. My breath was painful. It's like, she's really in this bizarre zone of like, because she even says, even thinking of him not like knowing what's right or wrong, like that kind of makes me sick, because in my mind, the women that are lined up, I'm imagining that only the women who are already consenting to this, like in their heads, will be at like the edge of this run to the cave, right?
Yeah.
That they are specific. That I am assuming that there's a very specific line for the maidens who want to be chosen.
I
And
hope there
so
is.
like that's kind of what it like that's how I read this, and maybe that's just me
Yeah.
like building like a more like consent positive like space,
Right.
but like in
Yes.
my mind it's like, because she even kind of talks about how she noticed it's just like all these women that are like in this specific like the edge of this like group. And so
Yeah.
I'm imagining that there are just all these women who are like, yes, I want to be chosen, I want to perform this ritual with the High Lord. So they're
Yeah.
in a line of consent is what I imagine.
I hope that is what it is. I do have some questions, which we'll
Yeah.
get into later.
Yeah.
But, bringing up the consent thing, it does bring up something interesting with like, she, like you said, she says like, it made me sick. The thought of Tamlin forcing me, the magic could strip away any sense of self of right or wrong. Like that brings up consent within Tamlin in terms of like, is he consenting to this magic?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, one could argue yes, because he has taken on being the High Lord. But we also have learned in, I think it was the last chapters, the only reason he's the High Lord is everyone in his family is dead. And he didn't actually want to be the High Lord. He
Yeah.
wanted one of his brothers to become the High Lord. So, like we said up top, consent is a huge theme for these chapters.
I mean, I hadn't thought about that too, just like from Tamlin's standpoint. I mean, it could also be why like Tamlin is just like pretty much a
Right.
Grumposaurus Rex, like
Yeah.
before he goes. Like, there's probably especially if he has, I think we all feel like he has developed feelings for Feyre.
Hmm.
Like, this can't really be fun to
No,
think
and
about. Like, he is hardcore just like a mating horse for this
yeah.
moment.
Which, like, and I think this, whether intentionally or unintentionally, brings up a very interesting conversation about men and sex because,
Mm,
we have this really, really toxic culture, at least, especially here in the United States, of assuming that men, whenever offered sex, they want
yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? And that just simply is not true.
Yeah.
It's not. And it's really apparent cases of sexual assault with men,
Yeah.
right? Like and I'm not saying this is like,
No.
I don't think these women are sexually assaulting
No.
Tamlin.
No.
Consent means you're enthusiastically saying yes,
Yeah.
right? There is no hesitation, not
Yeah.
an ounce of it. Tamlin's not seemingly enthusiastic
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah.
And so it does bring up this conversation of like, is he able to say no,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And even if he is, will his sense of duty allow him
Yeah.
to? Yeah, I'm very much in the camp of like, I think it's really gross, this culture we have where it's like, oh, well, like any sex offered to a man, they're super excited and should be grateful. And it's like,
No.
no.
No. Consent goes both ways,
Yep. Regardless of gender.
regardless of gender. So yeah, so sweet baby girl Feyre stays in bed. At some point she dozes off, like, and she wakes up, and we get into Corinne's sound moment for
Yes.
this week. A shuddering silence went through the house, and the hair in my arms arose as magic swept past me, rippling outward. Page 194. I always love
Yeah.
Ariel's reactions to my sound things.
I always wonder, like, what is it going to be? Sometimes it's like pretty obvious, but
Yeah.
like, I love it when you pick the ones that aren't as obvious. So
Yeah.
like this, I actually was not expecting that one. I was expecting what happens in the following scene.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love that you picked this.
And I think this is more, I chose that quote in particular more because like I actually think all of Calanmai in this whole kind of time, the sound design is so wildly important, because something that Ariel and I haven't like fully really talked about yet is just like these drums. These
Mm,
drum beats that are basically sound like they pretty much start even before a lot of the Fae show up to Calanmai. It's
yeah.
just this like drum beat, and she talks about how she feels a call because of the drum beat. And there's just this constant kind of reminder of these drum beats going on that, like, I believe are kind of this, like, signal of, like, okay, it's Calanmai, it's fire night, kind of,
Yep.
come one, come all. Like, here's the thing. And I think also how I start reading the drum beat is that it's really a part of the magic of
Yeah.
kind of getting people sort of into this kind of like feral, sort of like
Getting them
animalistic
horny.
orgy, getting you ready.
Yeah.
Music really sets the mood, you guys.
Oh,
You
you
know,
don't say.
oh my gosh. Like, if you're ever looking to like spice up a little time with your partner, sit together and make a playlist.
Ooh.
Just, it's good times. But so,
Great tip.
yeah, great tip. But so I think overall for all of Calamai, this drum beat is wildly important. So
Yeah.
I think it's this constant buildup. And like, we even have this moment when Feyre is talking to Lucien, where she says, I could almost see the drum beats pulsing against his skin, beckoning him to rejoin the crowd. I would think the drum beats start turning into this, it's more than just a sound. Like, it becomes this like
Cacophony.
feeling and this rhythm of the night, and like something that Ariel, I think we've already talked about, and what Ariel and I have actually done in one of her projects is you put in a frequency that the audience can't actually hear, but they can like feel it.
Yeah.
And so I would want to really play with that. I would want to build up that frequency of its rhythm.
Yeah.
And so that way it's almost this awkward thing of like I would almost want the audience at a certain point finding themselves like moving with the drums, because then when a shuddering silence went through the house and the hair in my arms arose as magic swept past me, like boom, gone.
Yeah.
Everything drops out. Like,
And the silence is so loud.
it's exactly. It's like loud, and then it's like she said she can like feel the magic sweep past her, like rippling outward. So like it would almost be this like cascade effect, and maybe to at the very end that low frequency leaves, or like, I don't know, I would really want to play with that. But like, I just think this whole scene and then the sudden silence is like huge.
Yeah.
So it's like an overall building of sound design. And I love it so much, because like, as I've talked before in the past, like silence is so important to the world of sound. And so just like, she fell asleep, but like I awoke the moment the drum stopped, is what she said. So it's this sudden silence. And also it's this moment for readers where we're like, oh, okay, so the deed is done. Orgy is done. Okay.
Mission complete.
Mission complete. Copy. And I also love how now that the deed is done, Feyre all of a sudden realized, like, she's like relieved it's done, but then she also realizes what that means. And so like, like her chest is tight and she's just not feeling, she's thinking about like, oh, how beautiful and charming this girl must have been. Right. And I literally wrote this, like, been there, knowing your crush is rightfully doing something with someone else. Like, he is allowed to do that because you're not together.
He has to.
And you can't, like, I don't know how many of y'all have been there, but I've absolutely been there, where I knew I had like no actual claim over this person, but they felt like they were mine.
Yeah.
And I knew that they were doing something with someone else, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. It's the most frustrating feeling ever. And so what does baby girl do? Baby girl eats. She goes to get some food.
Real quick, just because you did your sound moment, I'm going to do what I did last week. And I'm actually saving my directing writing moment for the spoiler section for the same reasons of it will spoil shit. So just wanted to say that. But getting back to what you were saying, so relatable. Like, if this were me, it'd be a tub of Ben and Jerry's.
Exactly.
Like,
some ice cream, maybe some chocolate. Like, she's just like, I'ma go eat.
Gonna put my feelings into food.
Oh, she does nibble on a chocolate cookie.
I think she also has like a lemon tart and like something else too.
Girl
and then eats her feelings.
Exactly. And then she decides that she's gonna go paint, because she's just like, you know what?
Fuck it.
I am awake. I have all these feelings that I can't really do anything with. I'm just going to vomit it up onto a page.
And Calamai is over, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was the whole reason she was sequestered to her bedroom is Calamai, it's over. But is it?
But it's not.
Here comes Tamlin.
Oh, man.
Dude just popped off his fucking nut and is still horny. Like,
I wrote, I was like, okay, so he's magic drunk is how I imagine
yep.
the whole thing. He is magic drunk because she says like he's half wild. His claws are like out, but like
Yeah, and things get very, to use your term, get very sticky in this situation.
yep,
I'm going to summarize what happens and then we'll dive into it.
yep.
But basically, Tamlin tells her, like, why aren't you in your room? She says, I was hungry. He then tells her, I smelled you. Like, as in, like, at Calamai, he says, I searched for you and you weren't there. Feyre kind of comes back at him a bit. He pushes her against the wall. She tells him to let go. And instead of letting go, Tamlin bites her. He doesn't sink his teeth into her, doesn't draw blood, but he bites her hard enough that we see the next day she has a bruise.
Mm-hmm.
She feels like she can't escape, but she does say on page 196, I couldn't escape. I wasn't entirely sure that I wanted to.
Yep.
So it's very sticky.
Very sticky.
But she makes it very clear to him, let me go. And she even says, I love this part. She says, why would I want someone's leftovers? Which, like, damn, girl.
So good. So good.
What a fucking, like, savage move. Honestly,
yeah.
I love it. And then he tells her, don't ever disobey me again. So, and she comes back at him saying, don't tell me what to do, which I'm
She
like, hell
slaps
yeah.
him.
Oh, yeah, she slaps
She
him.
slaps him. And it's just like, don't fucking tell me what to do, which is like.
And don't bite me like some enraged beast.
Yeah.
So, this is a very, very precarious situation.
This is a very interesting scene.
Yeah.
Because, oh God, I just feel like this pod is just like really exposing Corryn and like the things that she is into. Like,
oh, girl, same.
Sorry. This whole scene has a lot of people feeling a lot of different ways.
Understandably.
And here's I'm going to start with, I feel like however this scene makes you feel, you are not wrong.
Yeah.
However it makes you feel is you and your experiences and your things. And so I don't think we should hate on anyone for like how they feel about this scene.
No.
Because it's sticky icky, and not in like a super, fun sticky icky.
No,
way.
not that kind of sticky.
Uh-huh.
No, and I think this is I think Sarah J. Maas intentionally wrote this scene to be divisive.
Yeah.
Honestly.
That's what our girl does, But I remember when I first read this scene, I think I was perfectly down the middle of this whole like he smelled her and he couldn't find her and it drove him crazy. Like, that's pretty attractive.
Yeah.
Even this whole like pushing up against the wall, like I'm really into that kind of stuff. So it's just like, this is very, very hot. And like, he's talking close to his ear or close to her ear. And it even says like, she shuddered and she closed her eyes and like her back is arching into him. And then even when he bites her, she literally says that like, the push of his body against hers, like made her see lightning, made her grind her hips against him. And then also just like, the bite kind of lightens up and he starts like running his tongue over in that spot. And it's like, the heat pounded between my legs as he ground his body against me. And a moan slipped past my lips. It's very hard because on one end, it's really hot. But on the other end, she doesn't have full faculty of her body right now because like that's the other thing, like just because you get turned on by something doesn't mean consent.
No.
I think that's a really important thing that a lot of people like, there's a lot of argument about this and it really fucking pisses me off. Our bodies still at the end of the day like are like chemical reactions. we're
Yes.
just navigating through chemical reactions. So like you
Yeah.
can still get turned on and actually be in a position you do not want to be in. So it's really difficult here.
Our bodies just react sometimes.
Yes.
That doesn't mean our brains are consenting,
Yes.
right? Like, and that's what's important is the brain consenting.
Yeah.
And this is one of those, even though they're not having penetrative sex, right? Like, it's a sexual situation.
Yeah.
And, it's with her age, especially, she's not super experienced, Feyre. Like, she's been with Isaac, but
Yeah.
that's it. She's never been with the Fae. That's for damn sure. You got to wonder, right?
Yeah. And I think what's interesting too is that like you can tell Feyre doesn't even really know
No.
how she feels about this because Sarah J. Maas doesn't put in anything here that makes it like she doesn't say that she's like annoyed by her body reacting, which
Right.
romantasy books do give you that. When
Yes.
like when certain things are happening and the girl is just like, and it's not we're not talking like these are like sexual assault situations. It's
Right.
just like, like she was started and she's into it, but maybe she's kind of like annoyed with the guy, so she's like
Right.
annoyed that like that one thing turned her on that much or like whatever. And so we
Yeah.
don't get any of that kind of language here.
Right.
So you can kind of maybe read between the lines of that, like if she truly did not want, like, I don't, maybe she wouldn't have like allowed herself to arch into him, or if it did happen, maybe she didn't want it, she would have backed up, or like I don't know, we don't get some of the language where she's like actively, like I'm trying to look at the end. Yeah, because even at the end, she says like more. I wanted the hardness of his body crushing against mine. I wanted his mouth and teeth and tongue on my bare skin, on my breast, between my legs, everywhere. I wanted him everywhere. I was drowning in
Right.
that need. So I do actually think in the end of this chapter, we kind of get the like official confirmation that like she wanted this. Not
Right.
maybe not exactly what happened, but she was more okay with what was happening than not.
One thing I will say real quick, just we're flipping the tables. I'm going to play devil's advocate
Yeah.
for a second. I think this brings up a really interesting question of like being attracted to someone, right?
Mm.
Whether they're your partner currently or not yet, and when you want to have any sort of sexual encounter with them, right?
Yeah.
Not too long ago, it was perfectly legal for men to rape their wives,
Right.
right? We know there's many times where a person can start off having a sexual encounter with a person and then halfway through they want to stop.
Yeah.
Right? Meaning the consent is done.
Yeah.
So I think that's why this scene is really tricky.
It is tricky.
Is because she tells him, because regardless of how she is feeling, she tells him, I believe, 3 times in different ways to stop. And she makes it, she slaps him. She slaps him.
Well, and what's funny is I feel like she slaps him more because he says, "Don't ever disobey me again."
Sure.
I feel like her slap is more because of that, to be perfectly honest. And also, yeah, I think it's the slap of her kind of realizing like, wait, I totally just got caught up in this like magic drunk vibe you're in right now. And I totally got caught up with like thinking that maybe this was like sort of okay, but now you saying don't disobey me again, like that's gonna snap you out, and you're just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, no. I mean,
Right.
and I think it's really important that we see Feyre. I think it helps a little bit of the stickiness of this scene
Yeah.
by the fact that she is saying all these things of like, fuck you, bro. Like,
Yeah.
she knows she wants him, but she knows she doesn't want him like this. And honestly, the courage of this pretty powerful Fae in front of you doing this,
Yeah.
and she fucking slaps him in the face.
Yeah.
And it's just like, don't tell me what to do, and don't fucking bite me like you're a fucking animal. Like,
Yes.
don't do that. Because that's not easy to do,
No.
especially when you are attracted to the person. It's not easy to get rid of advances when you don't want it happening.
Right.
So it's even harder when you do want it happening.
And with someone so powerful.
So like, and I would not have thought less of Feyre if she hadn't done anything.
No.
because like this is such a crazy moment. But I
Yeah.
think it is very cool. Like I kind of feel like Sarah J. Maas gives us this moment here of like every woman everywhere. Like we got to see someone do what we all hope we can do in positions like this. Yeah, no, I'm super into you, bro, but this is not the fucking way for it to go down. I don't care that you're fucking magic drunk right now. Fuck off. Don't treat me like I'm just whatever. So like
Yeah.
there's a really important power that I think like happens here.
Yeah.
And so I think like this scene, and I remember first reading this scene, I remember being kind of annoyed that like our first sexual thing we get with Feyre and Tamlin is this very sticky, morally gray like situation. Because kissing of hands is very hot, but it's like
It's different.
it's different. This is sexual.
This is sexual. Yep.
And so I was like, no, that's not what I want. Can this moment be when she's like hardcore, like fully consenting to everything, and it's very obvious that like everybody wants this, you know? I mean, there's definitely like there's some pretty interesting kinks out there, I'll be honest. So again, that's why I'll go back to the thing of like however this scene made you feel is exactly correct. There's no right or wrong way to feel about this scene. However you feel is how you feel. And we're just talking about how this scene makes us feel.
I think that this being the first sexual encounter that these two have is
Interesting.
it's important.
Yeah.
I do think it's important. Just as I think it is important with anyone, like regardless if your first sexual encounter with your partner was fully consensual or not, I do think like that's going to color the relationship, right?
Yes.
And so yeah, I cuz I had the same feeling too of like why is she writing this first time between these two, because at this point it's blatantly clear like these two are they're the romantic leads of this book, right?
Yeah.
Why is she doing this? And I was frustrated.
Yeah.
I was like I wanted, it was that thing of like I want to be turned on by it, but
you
I
like can't fully be. Yeah, it's like it's very hard. And I mean I think the one major thing that I think we get a lot of stuff from the scene, but I think like from a first read standpoint, I feel like the biggest thing we really get from this is like, okay, confirmed they're both wildly into each other.
Yes.
Got it. Confirmed.
Yes. I think it's important this scene exists because this is a very real experience for a lot of people out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there who get into partnerships with other people where it starts off this way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some get better, some don't. We're going to find out which it is with these two, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And you know, in this, like I think what Ariel and I also keep telling to each other too is like we do have to remember that this is like fictional characters in a fictional world. He is taken over by some crazy magic lust situation. So there's a lot of, you know, things here. Nuance. Just what? Okay. Am I alone? I'm probably alone in this. Am I alone in that I feel like it's weirdly attractive that the Fae can smell when you're aroused? Is that just me?
So this is like, it's so funny because this is another common trope.
Very common trope within romantasy.
And not just with Fae. Not just Fae. Like I'm reading Crowns of Nyaxia,
vampires,
which is vampires.
Yeah. It's like very common trope. I feel like I'm back and forth on this.
I'm very back and forth because on the one hand, like when you're getting down, like I think that's hot, right?
Yeah.
But then like I feel every series where this is a trope in it, there's one point where like one of the characters gets aroused when they're not supposed to be, and then like whoever they're turned on by smells it and they're like, God damn it. So I'm half and half, honestly.
Yeah, right? Because also like it's kind of fun in some of those books when you're like, oh, they're in class and like someone like is like, what are you thinking about? Like, God damn it. Like I can't focus here. And you're like, oh, that's like kind of hot. You guys like get to do foreplay without like really having to do anything. Like that's kind of fun. But if you're like in an argument and then like you realize that you're like kind of turned on by the aggression, but you like want to stick in the argument. Like I feel like that's really fucking annoying because they could be like, oh, you're like, oh, fuck you, I'm mad at you right now. Ignore the smell that it's smelling from my loins, you fucker.
You know what's kind of funny is like, I'm not going to go as far as to say it's an evening of the plane, but like if you think about it from a male and female anatomy standpoint, dudes can't easily hide their arousal as much as people with female anatomy can.
Very true.
Right?
Very true. It is a balancing of the fields, one might say.
a little bit, because like how many times do we read a book, right, at romantasy where like for whatever reason, like, you know, it's a classic trope of getting the guy and the girl in the same bed together, but like they're platonically there together. They have yet to confess their feelings to one another. And then the dude's boner's just sticking her in the back, right?
Sticking her in the back.
It's an interesting invention of romantasy.
Yeah, it's very intriguing because it is a wildly common. It's like in almost every single book, they'll find a way for whatever magical creature that's in the relationship can smell like the arousal. And I just think it's like it's kind of fascinating. So I just wanted to ask how you felt about it. But yeah, okay. So chapter 22.
Okay, so Feyre wakes up the next morning. Everyone's a little Calanmai hungover.
I know. I literally wrote like hungover Faye LOLs.
I know, right? Like, oh god, especially because like their senses are so heightened. Could you like? Lucien is probably literally hungover. He drinks a lot. I don't know if Tamlin is literally hungover. Feyre hasn't drank, so we know she's not. But yeah, Faye hungover must be something that pretty I do rough. Not envy.
Well, and Tamlin probably feels kind of weird by just like the magic that like coursed through his body.
Yeah,
and like all of that. Like, I mean, I also kind of feel like there was probably a level of him holding himself back when he was with Feyre, which is like terrifying. And Feyre's fucking tired because have you ever tried to fall asleep horny? It's really hard.
Right?
And baby girl tried to fall asleep horny and probably, but also like annoyed that she was horny and then like just pissed
kind of violated.
Off. Yeah. So I feel like no one got good sleep this evening.
But I love what she does. So
me too.
She debates putting on a scarf to hide because she wakes up with this gnarly ass bruise from Tamlin's bite, right? She debates putting on a scarf and she's like, fuck it. Nope. He knows what he did. I know what he did. I'm not hiding it. So she goes downstairs to lunch because it's by the time they wake up, it's lunchtime.
Yeah.
Which been there, done that, remembering well into my college years. And it's Lucien and Tamlin sitting down there. And she sits down and she basically shows off this bruise.
Yeah.
And it works because Lucien says, what is that bruise? She points to Tamlin with her fork and she says, ask him. He did it. Right?
Yeah.
To which Tamlin's response is, I'm not going to lie, this response
is really, I actually think
it drives me up the wall.
It's pretty annoying response. Yeah.
But he says, she seems to have a death wish. So if Feyre can't be bothered to listen to orders, then I can't be accountable for the consequences. But what I do love is Feyre calls him out and she calls him a fairy pig.
Yeah.
And then basically Tamlin proceeds to smile at that, which is a very, it's kind of an unexpected response. And she says, the Tamlin I knew had returned and it made me happy.
Yeah.
So she knows by Tamlin smiling at her when she insults him, the magic from Calanmai has worn off Tamlin. Yeah. So we got the old Tam back, right?
Yeah.
And he does apologize to her.
Yeah,
he apologizes at dinner and he gives her flowers, right?
Yeah. I love though that right before that, Feyre paints them as pigs.
So good.
2 fairy pigs wallowing in their own filth. Like I love it. I love Feyre how it's just like, you know what? Fuck you. Like, you are really annoying at lunch. Really annoying response. Like, fuck you guys. And just like this, like, she just kind of gets out her little moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's even why, like, she's able to, I would say, like, accept this, like, apology at dinner. Yeah. Like, I personally don't really know why Feyre has to apologize. But, like, whatever. Like
She feels the
I
need for some reason.
yeah, she feels the need. I mean, maybe she's like, yeah, because you warned me. I don't know. But so
Yeah.
I do love the, like, I think that's why she's able to like accept his apology, is like
Yeah.
she gets it out by painting them as pigs.
I feel like that's like the weird Prythian equivalent of like, this is such a modern thing, but like turning someone you're mad at into like a meme or
Yeah,
something like
exactly.
that, you
Exactly.
know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's literally what she does. She literally turns them into a meme of fairy pigs, like wallowing in their own
Exactly.
filth. Like, it's
It's so
hilarious.
good.
And you're just like, yes, go off, queen. Cause also, like,
Truly.
that's painted. That's there forever, y'all. It's not going
Yep.
anywhere. So
Nope.
take a little bit of that, little pieces of shit. But yeah.
Literally. But yeah, so, Tamlin's apology clearly works because the next day we start off with Alice saying, "Don't know if I should be pleased or worried." And it's because Feyre has decided for the first time ever that instead of wearing her tunic and pants to dinner, she's going to wear a beautiful dress,
She's gonna wear a dress.
which I kind of also was like, I don't know if I should be pleased or worried a
Yeah.
little bit. Like,
Right?
girl, you okay? But she does. She reassures Alice. She's like, don't worry. I'm going to be wearing my tunic and pants during the day, but like I might wear a dress once in a while to
Yeah.
dinner.
She
So,
like wants to dress up.
which I
She
feel is so
wants to get
relatable.
fancy. Oh yeah, it's so
Like,
relatable.
we've all been there when we've had a crush on someone where like
Mhm.
we want to get dolled up in whatever way that looks for us, right?
Yep.
Sometimes it's dresses, sometimes it's looking a little more masculine, whatever it is.
Yep.
You change your appearance, right? To impress
Yeah.
your, as you've been saying, your paramour,
Your
which I
paramour.
love. But
Well,
yeah.
I'm trying to find a genderless word, and I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
feel like paramour is like the easiest way,
It's a
so we can
great
be
word.
like all inclusive to
Yes.
all of our friends here. But yeah, you get you want to get like you want to get gussied up sometimes,
Yes.
just to kind of, because I almost think it's like her way too of kind of being like, yeah, I'm into you, bro. Like, that was kind of weird the other night, but we came out of it both knowing that we are both hot for each other.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get a little gussied up. It's kind of funny though, because it's like I'll do this at home. Like,
Yeah.
my partner and I, we've been home all day and like kind of just hanging out, and then all of a sudden I'll like show up and I have like a dress on, and he's like, "Oh, hello," and I'm like, "Hi."
I love that. Cue Taylor Swift's dress. If you know, you know.
Yeah, no, and like, and I'm not saying that's me being like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go like fuck." Like,
Right,
that's
right.
not. It's more that it's just like sometimes, I know my dude sees me in sweatpants and sweatshirt all the time, and I know he still thinks I'm beautiful. But like every now and
Right.
then, I just want to give him a little bit of something fun to look at.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do it. Oh, but then while she's getting ready, we get this really interesting factoid about
Yeah.
Alice,
Yes. We
right?
learned so much. Like, I feel at this point, every time we get like a scene between Feyre and Alice of like, and it's always like when Alice is like doing her hair or something like that, which again, we talked about gossip the last episode. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so girls' time, right?
Yes.
Like I
Yes.
love it. We get more about Alice, and this is actually one thing I really love about this series is and I think this is really kind of the only Sarah J. Maas series we see this in, where the servants, right? The people who are typically in most other books you wouldn't really hear much about other
Yeah.
than they're just like dressing up
There.
the main
Yeah.
characters, right? Yeah, they're there.
Yeah.
We actually understand no, they are people, or I guess fae too, right? Like they have lives, right? So last time we got that the whole information about Alice's nephews and how her
Mm-hmm.
sister and brother-in-law were murdered. This time we find out Alice was from the summer court,
Yeah.
which we have yet to see.
Like, we don't really know
Yeah.
anything about the other courts besides like, okay, so we know Lucien is from the autumn court. I mean, I feel like the only thing
Yeah.
we really know about all the courts is that like it's probably
What they're
all pretty
called.
brutal everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they're all seasonal, like season themed or like day and night themed, like
Solar themed. Yeah.
solar themed. Like, that's kind of all we really have gotten thus far. Like, the map is kind of the only thing that has really given us any. But yeah, it's very interesting to hear that she's from the summer court,
Yeah.
and that's where like any of her remaining family like is.
And they thought she was crazy for coming to the spring
Yeah.
court, which is kind of wild because she does say that she made that decision after her sister and brother-in-law were killed.
Yeah, so it's like in hearing that, my brain is like, okay, so they were killed in the summer court and she
Right.
escaped with the nephews, or they were killed somewhere else and she left summer
Yeah.
court to take care. Like there was a fleeing
A
of
fleeing of some
some
sort.
kind. So
Well, and
yeah, yeah,
it also brings up she's not the only one who fled to the summer or to the spring court because Lucien also fled to the spring court.
yeah,
So everyone who is kind of a refugee, if you
yeah.
think about it, they're coming to the spring court, it seems.
Fleeing. I mean, you
Yeah.
got to give then like that clearly shows like okay, so Tamlin he takes in the strays.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it makes sense to me from like, especially what we just recently learned about how he, like, what happened to his family and who his dad was
Right.
and how his dad was. Like,
Right.
it makes a lot of sense that like he's almost creating this like semi like island of misfit toys vibe where he's just like,
Yeah.
sure, come along, like I'll protect you, you know, which
Yeah.
is great. Definitely makes us like Tamlin more.
Yeah. And it also brings up this question of like, what the fuck are the other High Lords doing?
Dude, what's
Right?
going
Like,
on?
are they doing something to make them flee? Where are they? Like, all like, what is going on? What is the deal with the other High
Oh, yeah,
Lords?
like, is it
Right?
is it this she? Like, is she the one who might have, like, hurt Alice's family? Like, I love it's
Yeah.
so funny to me how in this book, pretty much any time we get information about the rest of Prythian, you
Yeah.
are less informed somehow.
I know.
Like,
I
you
know.
are you're getting
Truly.
stuff and you're like, "Nope, more questions.
You know what
I
it
have
is?
no knowledge."
Growing up, my favorite TV show was the show Lost, and it still holds a very special place in my heart. And Lost is like notorious. If you've seen Lost, you fucking know. Notorious for doing that, where it's like the minute you get information about one of the big fucking questions, you get like 10 more
Yeah.
questions. And I honestly, there's been a few things that made me go, I wonder if Sarah J. Maas is a Lost fan because like she does that in multiple books she has written.
Yeah.
Although she actually answers her
I was
questions.
just about to say, I was just like, I think the one thing that I am super willing to say to our readers, because you guys know I'm like such a spoiler stickler.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that I am fine to say is like, you will get the answers. This is not a
Yes.
situation where she writes herself into a corner. Like,
No.
this is all very purposeful the way that this is happening right now. So just like, fear not. But yeah, so we get this spring court thing. Pretty fascinating. And then we go into dinner time. I kind of love this whole moment where she like walks down and then like Lucien is immediately like, okay, bye bye. Like she's dressed up.
It's the classic like 80s movie where the girl takes off her glasses and walks down the staircase and she's like beautiful, right? Like
Yeah.
it reminds me of that where it's like, oh, like you've been pretty this whole time. Although he has called her beautiful
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So,
But I just
but
love like literally like Lucien sees her and he's just like, well, I'm late for something incredibly important. Like he's just like, peace out. This is very obvious. Like, nope, I'm gone.
finally
Out.
being a decent wingman.
Yeah,
here.
exactly. And like I really like all the language that Sarah J. Maas uses for this like whole moment because like we have all like she's so nervous
Yeah.
and all this stuff. Like we have all felt that. And I love it when they say that they can feel the person's like eyes on them,
Yeah.
you know?
Eyes are an important part of
Very
this scene.
important. Yeah. And so it's that just this whole like his undivided attention cuz like there's such power in having someone's undivided attention and like I just kind of love like baby girl's so nervous and I just think all there's like a ton of little things that Tamlin does in this scene that like definitely validate her choice of like wearing this dress and like all of this stuff.
Yes.
He definitely like quells her fear and her nervousness and I just think it's and then even her little thing of like sitting down at the table and it like the table's huge and
Yeah.
she's like you're so far away, it's like you're in another room. Like there's this kind of confidence that I feel like weirdly comes out of Feyre and I
Yeah.
think it a lot has to do with the fact of like there is a power in like using your what you got to kind of
Yeah.
like especially when you're like actively consenting to, like, she
Yeah.
wanted him to be staring at her. She
Yeah.
wanted him to be looking at her up and down. That was why she dressed this way.
Yeah.
Like, she made a choice to do this for Tamlin, right?
Yes.
Like, this
Well,
was actively for him. And so it's
the
like, this is very much her consenting to,
yes.
like, the attention that he gives her. Like, so yeah.
And I think this is like a very like core memory moment that I think a lot of women in particular have around this age, right? Where they
Mm,
realize their sexual power and
yeah.
I'm not talking about just like having sex, but like
Yeah.
they their presence alone
Mm,
and they lean into like certain things that they can wear, to
yeah.
kind of embody that more. The thing I love the most though about this scene, he keeps telling her she's beautiful, don't you know you're beautiful, did you look in the mirror? I love what she says on page 203,
Mm,
where she says, and I dare to say that some kind of light had crept into my eyes, not my mother's or Nesta's eyes, mine.
mm.
And I think like that to me, yes, obviously we're like fawning over the romance between her and Tamlin, and we're like so happy like they're finally like being more explicit about their feelings towards one another. But I think what I personally love even more than that is Feyre's finding love for herself
Yes.
and really starting to not feel like she's being identified by her family or other people outside of her. She's a person of her own. And
Yeah.
I think like this moment's actually like really underrated, I
Yeah.
think, in this book. It's a
Yeah.
really important moment.
She's claiming her power here.
Mhm.
You know, she is claiming her personal power. She is accepting the compliment that
Yeah.
she looks beautiful.
Yeah,
And she's
that's big.
accepting it because it's how like she looks like herself, and she is accepting that comment. Cuz
Yeah.
like many of us, I know sometimes when my partner tells me I'm beautiful, I don't like, I'm like, "Ugh, you're just saying that
Same.
because you know I feel gross, or you know that I blah 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 blah." Right? And she is really, she's
It's sinking in.
yeah, it's sinking in, and she's claiming her power, I think.
Yeah.
And it's really quite lovely. And this whole like him shortening the table so they can be closer
Yeah.
together, and like all of this stuff, like it's very sweet. Like, I
Yeah.
think this whole, and I kind of, after this moment of her like claiming her power, she also like really takes a moment to like look at Tamlin again too. And like there's a lot of these, and we already talked about it like a while ago, so like I won't go too deep into it, but I just think it's another reminder of these moments of like Feyre feeling more comfortable within her space, within what her reality is. So she's
Yeah.
really taking time to like actively use her painter artist brain to like really look at Tamlin. And it's
Yeah.
wild to me how often when she looks at Tamlin, she can literally see the burden of him being a high lord like all over him. The little thing of like she can see how taxing it was for him to shorten the table,
Yeah.
which is like kind of a big deal. And then even like later when we get into this like really fun painting room
Yeah.
moment, she notices how long it took him to like light the room up.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because like there's that line where she's like, the Suriel had said the High Lords were power, and
Yeah.
yet something had to be truly thoroughly wrong for if this is all he can manage. So it's like we're in this really sweet zone, but we're also kind of like being reminded of just like all the things that like Tamlin is like carrying on his shoulders that Feyre can see, and it
Yeah.
it affects how she treats him, you
Well,
know?
and it shows the power of appreciation, right?
Yeah.
Because like Feyre's not used to being complimented, not just on her looks, but at all,
Yeah.
right? Like her family doesn't really ever express to her how much they appreciate everything she's done.
Yeah.
And Tamlin is appreciating her in, a way. I mean, like he's literally calling her, he's appreciating her looks, which like,
Yes.
like did Isaac ever? Right? Like we don't
I mean,
really know.
yeah, like it's yes, we want the soul connection, but like people also want to be told that
Yeah,
you are attractive, or that the
right.
person you're into finds you attractive, like
And genuinely too. Like and
genuinely. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think, like, by him appreciating her, she then
Yes.
appreciates him by, like, recognizing, like you said, like, how much it took for him of his powers to
Yeah.
shorten the table, to light the candles. So
Which he
and
is all doing for her.
he's all doing for her. And then, even more so, she gives back by
Yeah.
being, I would argue, the most vulnerable she has
Oh,
been
God.
in the entire book by showing her, or her showing him her paintings
Dude, so
and
vulnerable.
gifting him one.
Yep.
So she takes him to the painting room, her little painting room,
Which
which
she keeps locked, which I
I was
love.
gonna
I
say,
love.
and he and like, look, I totally like,
100% get this.
I get, as someone, I used to, listeners, I used to sing and I no longer, and like it's even hard for me to like allow David to hear me sing. So like it's, art is really vulnerable,
Yeah.
right? And so like this is like a really big moment for her. So she has painted for him the scene of the meadow and the starlight pool, right?
Mhm.
But what's really interesting is, he obviously appreciates it,
Yeah.
but he immediately starts looking around the other paintings, and he looks at one in particular and realizes that the first painting he looks at is the forest that she hunted in.
Yeah.
And then he sees the painting of the cottage she lived in, which he recognizes. Then he himself, kind of like Feyre did the night before, gets a little jealous and realizes she's painted from the sounds of it, it seems like a what's the artistic term? It's a
Sounds very
impress
abstract.
yeah, abstract kind of impressionist painting
Yeah.
of her and Isaac, right?
Yeah.
Rolling around the hay, and he gets a little jealous, but he immediately walks it
Which I
back.
love. I love that
I
he has this,
do.
like, I love that they both acknowledge this moment of, like, him getting jealous, but then also kind of like he has absolutely no right to be. Like,
Oh my god, yeah.
Feyre actually has more right to be jealous of Calanmai
Yeah.
than Tamlin does of Isaac, but I love that he's
Well,
kind of like, okay.
I would say the opposite, because with Calamai, it's basically a one night stand. Feyre and Isaac had a
Oh,
long
interesting.
standing
But
sexual
you know,
relationship.
I'm saying more in the sense of like
Recent.
she didn't know Tamlin. Their feelings
Yeah.
hadn't started yet. Like, there's literally
Sure.
nothing there to,
Yeah.
like, from a timeline perspective more than
Right.
anything else. You know what I mean? But yeah, I
Yeah.
do love that he kind of like gathers himself because he's like, right. I have no right. Okay, moving
Which,
forward.
like, I'm not gonna speak on everyone's behalf, but I think a lot of us tell ourselves, like, "Ugh, we don't like it when our partner gets jealous," but it's like, when it's like this, it is a little hot.
It's kind of nice. It's kind
It's
of
kind
nice,
of nice.
especially because she says like it was the only escape I had, and like he says that like he loosed a long controlled breath before
Yeah.
before moving to the next painting.
Yeah.
So it's like it's kind of hot because you're like,
Yeah.
okay, he was jealous that she had a lover, but it's almost hotter that he like understands he has no right. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, way to be
It's a
self-aware.
contained
Good job.
jealousy.
Yeah, exactly.
So he decides he would rather have the painting of Ferris Forest than the Starlight Pool, right?
Yeah.
And the reason is on page 209, he says, I've had many lovers, females of noble birth, warriors, princesses, but they never understood what it is like for me to care for my people, my lands. What scars are still there, what the bad days feel like. This, the painting, reminds me of it, that I'm not alone.
Yeah. 207, I think, actually.
I'm sorry, 207.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's a really vulnerable moment for him, because one, he's telling her, hey, I've had many lovers, but also, no matter how many he's had, no one seems to have understood what he goes through like she
Yeah.
does, right? Like, obviously he's doing on a larger level in terms of like there's more people he has to care for than she has, but she does get it, because it does really seem like his job is kind of thankless,
Yeah.
like hers keeping her family alive was.
Mm-hmm.
And this painting of the woods reminds him of that. So that's a big moment for these two.
Yeah. And what's interesting is we literally just talked about how Feyre sees the burden, right?
Yeah.
At dinner, she really takes a moment to look at him.
Yeah.
And we immediately we get him being like, I know you see me.
Yeah.
I know you do.
Yeah.
And looking at this painting of this cottage, or I think, does he grab the cottage or does he grab the woods?
The woods.
So seeing the painting of the woods, which is fascinating because that's where she killed his friend.
Yeah. Fuck, I didn't even think about that
Right.
part.
But
Yeah.
he chooses that, and then he immediately is saying like, this shows me that like you know what this feels like and that you see me.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's really, really powerful, because also right before he chooses this, Feyre looks around and realizes, like, she says, there they were, all the wounds I'd slowly been leeching these few months. So she is literally pulling the pain out of her body and painting it.
Yeah.
And instead of this, like, what I'm assuming is this very, like, bright and pretty painting of the starlight pool and the meadow
Right.
and, like, all this stuff, he chooses the darkness.
Yeah.
He chooses what she's been, quote, leeching from
Yeah.
herself.
Yep.
Like, that's pretty beautiful, because, like, I had a moment in here, and I remember this is how I felt the first time too, being kind of annoyed that she takes the time
Yeah.
to paint this one specific one, like, for him.
Yeah.
And he very immediately starts looking at all these other ones that are very personal. And
Yeah.
it's slightly violating, because he's kind of just like perusing, right? And so it's a little like, dude, what the fuck? But
Yeah.
but then it's almost him showing that, like, he wants all parts of her,
Yeah.
and that he appreciates that he will never forget, like, where she comes from, and he still he likes her because of where she comes from. And that's a really powerful, like,
Yeah.
statement, I feel.
It's fun. It's funny because I had the same thing that happened to you, but the opposite.
Mm.
And we'll talk about it in the spoilers. Where the first time I read it, and I'm 50-50. I'm honestly split. Because I agree with you in terms of what you think now of like this is really beautiful that he wants all of her. I can't say why, but uh this time reading it, I had a little bit of the opposite reaction of like, ooh, like she made this for you, but you chose this other thing. We'll talk about why later. But for me, I think it's a 50-50 split,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, again, she's kind of giving us this other moment where it's like not 100% of like what you want, but the
Yeah.
sentiment is, I mean, it's beautiful that that by looking at these paintings, he is touched, and he doesn't feel alone. And,
Yeah.
I think also looking at the paintings, he's learning more about her. He learns that she was there when her dad's, like, leg got broken. We kind of get like a more
Yeah.
intense image of what, when these debtors came and fucked up her dad, and how, like,
Yeah.
she stopped it.
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, you were there." And so, like, he's just like learning even more about, like, her ferocity as a person. And I
Yeah.
think also in the middle of this, what I find, like, fascinating is, like, once he kind of chooses this, she gets so, like, taken over by this feeling that she has for him, where classic Feyre mode comes in of solution, solution, solution,
Yep.
right? Like, and it's interesting, it's this really big quote that Ariel and I both really clearly
Yeah.
wanted to talk about, which was like, basically the quote is just like, she wants to rip that mask off of his face. She wants to see all of him. And she wants to be told, like, tell me, like, what can I do?
Yeah.
How can I solve this? Because
Yeah.
if anything, she's a solver. Like,
Yeah.
as we've seen, she's gonna throw herself into a pool of water to figure out how to swim, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is who she is. And he's so taken over by the fact that she just wants to help him, like a human helping a fairy. Like, it's so opposite of what these worlds have kind of, like, learned of each other. And she's even like, if you're gonna keep me in this sort of, like, ignorant space, what can I do to not be distracting or to help? Like, should I leave?
Right.
you know? And he says, no, I don't want you to live somewhere else. I want you here where I can look after you, where I can come home and know you're here, painting and safe.
Yep.
And it's a, like, through the eyes of a first read, it's a very sweet, it's adorable because he's calling the space where she is home.
Yeah.
It's showing he loves her routine that she has formed at his home. And so and it's him telling her, like, no, like, you are a comfort. You are actually like helping me just by like existing here. Which like on one end, annoying, because just tell her some things so she could fucking help you, bro.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then on, you know, but then on the other end, it's like he is already viewing her as like a staple in his like day-to-day life.
You're enough.
You're enough.
You being you is enough.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
And also, like, boy has it bad.
He's got it so down bad.
He's got it bad. And so does her. I love how the chapter ends with she's like, I didn't lock my bedroom door that night. Like, girl. Whoa.
Scandalous.
Okay. So scandalous.
Well, on that note, so that's the end of the chapters.
Yep.
Next week, we are going to cover chapters 23 and 24. They're a little bit shorter, but I think we're going to actually... like I said, we started reading ahead, and I may have to bring out a whiteboard at some point.
We have a flow chart we need to create.
Yeah,
I think
we have some questions that I don't know if they ever get answered, honestly, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
If you feel called, we would love for you to rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. It really does help get us out there. You know, we are such a new podcast, so the more we have that, the more people will be able to see us. So we'd love for you to do that. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Cauldron Save Us Pod for some very silly content that we make, both from the pod as well as not from the pod. We do some fun TikTok trends and things like that. And then if you want to pop in, say hi, have any suggestions or answer questions, you can email us at cauldronsaveus@gmail.com. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I think as we go forward, the spoiler-free episodes might be a little bit shorter, and that's not because we have forgotten about you guys. We're really trying to split these chapters up into reasonable reading, and also just like we're getting closer and closer to the portion of the Sarah J. Maas books where you just kind of want to rage to the end, and we always invite you guys to go forward and rage to the end and just come back and visit us when you're done.
Also, not gonna lie, we're getting to a point where
we're getting there.
It's starting to get really hard to not spoil some stuff. So for that reason alone, these might be a little bit shorter because we simply cannot talk about certain things without spoiling. So.
Yeah, but we don't want you to feel, we love you guys. Don't worry about the episodes getting shorter. It doesn't mean we're forgetting about you. It just means we're trying to protect you is really what it is.
Exactly. So, well, on that note,
as always, you're welcome.
And we're sorry. Bye, guys.
Bye.